name is Cherish, and welcome to an episode of Know Your Hunger. Judging by the thumbnail, I am going to talk about Beyonce's Black is King, the visual component to The Lion King, The Gift, which was released in 2019, and which Black is King was released in 2020, July 31st, 2020. There's going to be a lot of buzz about this film, especially due to the visuals, and a lot of research is obviously going to be done. So Black is King is a visual interpretation of 2019's The Lion King, a live action version of The Lion King. I only watched a couple scenes of Beyonce portraying herself as Nala and Chiwetel Ejiofor as Scar on clips on YouTube, because I didn't find the live action to be worthy of watching. Like most people, with animation you could get away with the exaggerations on screen, but you can't really do that with like live animals. It just look plain, just look awkward. And judging by the casting, it looked pretty great, especially if you have James Earl Jones on deck. But it really looked awkward to have such a powerful scene, powerful dialogue, I must say, and to have, just plain, pretty average movements, what you would expect from animals. This is what you would expect from like a Discovery documentary. Before I move on right quick, I thought Chiwetel Ejiofor really killed it as Scar. His voice acting as Scar, I really felt like he did a great job from the clips that I watched, carrying that Shakespearean tradition, that Shakespearean element that we had seen, in the original Lion King in 1994. Moving on to my analysis of this film, I wanted to talk a few parts like the role of water, the role of the moon, the role of cattle. I think that's a big one we need to talk about. That interpretation, the role of black woman. And also I want to talk about certain symbols and also the criticism received from this film. So to start, I want to talk about the interpretations of the film, really the inspiration from the film, especially Lion King. In particular, the scene where Beyonce is carrying the baby and leading the baby in the basket, which is reminiscent of the book of Exodus, when Yocheved, Moses' mother, seeks to put, baby Moses in the basket and lead it down the Nile. Because Pharaoh saw that the Hebrews were chosen people of God, he decided to, X them out. Genocide. Because of that, Yocheved sought to direct her baby boy in another direction, because the book of Exodus is one of the inspirations behind The Lion King, as well as William Shakespeare's Hamlet. The fact, just like Simba, Moses and Hamlet had to go away after dealing with the tough realities. Going along with talking about that scene, let's get into the role of water. So water is very prevalent in Black is King. The role of water is pretty significant in the role of Africa and its diaspora. From my research, water is to be comforting, is a source of hope, resource. Water leads people to their destination. Water connects and will lead the way back home. From my article, one quotes that water, by putting the baby basket into the water and Beyonce overseeing it, is overseeing the African culture in different parts of the world. The goddess Oshun, the Orisha in Yoruba culture, water is needed in the making of humanity. And we also see some examples like Calabash was stereotypical, but it's one of those instances of the symbolism of carrying water. Oversight of bringing something that will nourish the people. Water, it has a duality, meaning that while it washes us with comfort and is cooling, at the same time it serves painful memories, such as water playing a role in the Middle Passage, the Atlantic slave trade with Africa and its diaspora. And water, from this article that I read, in one sense, water is an arena for the resistance that liberates, nourishes, and sanctifies the people, but it can also be weaponized by hegemonic forces seeking to degrade, poison, or eliminate rebellious populations. So I could give you a couple of examples, like the Flint water crisis in Detroit. There's this documentary that I watched. Water bills were so high that it was one of the causes for many people having their homes on foreclosure. And also on a personal note for me, Hurricane Katrina. Next role is the role of the moon. We see the role of the moon being prevalent in Black is King, and also in The Lion King, if you remember the scene where Mufasa tells Simba that no matter where you are, you can always look up to the stars, you can look up to the moon. Your ancestors, the past kings, will always be there. And that rung true for descendants of slaves, looking for certain things to comfort, certain things that will remind them of home, like looking at the moon. It is a symbol of fertility. A couple things will be talked about fertility later on, but the moon is also seen as a symbol of fertility. So moving on to what I thought was the green guy, but also is a color that is Haint Blue. So the role of the Haint Blue man is to guide Simba throughout his journey to kingdomhood and to protect them from forces of evil, that being Scar and the hyenas. So some of you may be familiar with the Gullah Geechee region, a stateless region between Georgia and South Carolina. You may hear it in work like Gloria Naylor's Mama Day, or as I had as a kid, Gullah Gullah Island. The Haint Blue was used as a symbol of shooing away evil spirits to protect them while they were asleep at night. Like with water, the Haint Blue was used by slaves and their descendants to protect themselves from haints, evil spirits, or blue hags. But like with water, it also caused a duality of protection and pain, because Haint Blue is made from indigo, and indigo was one of the cash crops during slavery, along with sugar, Tabasco, and cotton. So we see another duality with an object for African Americans that nourishes, protects, and is also proved as dangerous. Moving on to the role of colors. So I want to start off with white. I also see this in Hindu religion. Also another scene of Queen Sugar where the siblings, the Bordelon siblings, Charlie, Ralph, Angel, and Nova, are wearing white, carrying on that tradition into the modern age. And white is used in festive activities as a sign of purity, piety, and peace, especially for wakes. Like, I guess like with Hindu culture, they don't wear black because they don't want to have more grief with that color. So white is supposed to shoo off the spirits. And some noted that Beyonce's face was covered in white halfway because when Mufasa dies, Simba has not fully matured enough to be king. So that is something to point out. With pink, we see often with pink that it represents femininity, especially with Nala. And we'll talk about purple. Purple is frequently seen as a symbol of royalty. It was only for those who can afford because of the process of making the dye into purple. And so also another color will be yellow. We see Beyonce throughout the film wearing certain ensembles in yellow in reference to the Orisha goddess Oshun. We see Beyonce portraying herself in certain iconographies to further celebrate her motherhood with her 3 kids, Blue Ivy, Rumi, and Sir. So we definitely see that throughout the film, her celebration of giving birth. So moving on, we'll talk about the symbols of royalty. A couple of scenes in Mood Forever, which I really thought was reminiscent of I Can't Wait to Be King, the material aspect of kingdomhood. One of the symbols of royalty in African culture is the Botolo hat. It's part of the Congolese culture, in particular the Ikanda people. This is a hat that represents prestige and wealth. This is a hat that connects with rituals and insignia of office. Another symbol of royalty is cowrie shells, which was used as currency. Beyonce has some cowrie shells because it also represents fertility and tree of life, growing humanity. We also see throughout the film, especially in Mood Forever and earlier on in the film, is cheetah prints, and some people may see that as stereotypical. Cheetah prints is prevalent in the Bantu ethnic group, which is also a symbol of status. Towards the end of Black is King, we see Simba, Nala, and their baby together, and he also wears a hat. I'm gonna put it up on the screen that represents chiefdom, kingdomhood, royalty. Also, we see here with this umbrella is reference to the Asante people of Ghana. It is a symbol of chiefdom. We'll talk about cattle horns, and I know that concern a lot of people because, certain images, let's just say it like that. But cattle is prevalent in the continent of Africa. Cattle is seen as a status of wealth. Cattle is seen as a status of wealth and status. So, for example, in Ethiopia, there are 57 million cattle, and we definitely see that in the Mercy tribe. And also, Beyonce has a pipe that she has in that scene with the cow horns and riding on top of her steed. The smoke pipe is reminiscent in Xhosa culture. Cowhide is also a nod to Xhosa culture. If you look up certain pictures, especially with Shaka Zulu, there are cowhide being used as shields when they go into battle. I should have mentioned this earlier, but it also made me think of Sunjata. If anybody read the epic old Mali tale of Sunjata, I suggest you do, because it does remind you of the Lion King, of that trajectory in the story. But it also reminded me of Sologan, the mother of Sujata, because she is referenced as a buffalo woman. The book describes her as, I'll say homely, but she is vital to, the creation of Sunjata and his chiefdom. And moving on, we're going to talk about the celebration of the Black woman, because if woman holds up half the sky, then definitely the African woman does it twicefold. So there's this voiceover in the film, and the man was talking about, how much Black women, hold a society down, in particular the Black men down. Enter Nala, because Nala is that person, is one of those people that gives him a push, that is by his side, as most Black women usually are when it comes to Black men. So moving on to talk about Brown Skin Girl, it's not one of my favorite songs, but I do love the message here. We need to affirm our love of skin, especially for those of deeper complexion. I practice self-love here. I never really dealt with, the dark skinned girl blues, but so it is, disheartening sometimes to see, moments of like colorism and things like that affecting, women that are my shade. So it's great to see Beyonce use her platform to tell, brown skinned girls, women of deeper complexion, that you are beautiful. This must hit home for Blue Ivy, because pretty much from birth she has been subjugated to some disparaging comments, to the point of having a petition for her parents to comb her hair, and then later on, people admiring her hair, her afro, when before you talk so down about this little girl. Leave this girl alone. Leave children alone. Children are off limits. So moving on to that affirmation in this song with WizKid, I don't know whose idea is to have, those montage of the group of people, standing. I like that, because so much we've been taught to look down, Well, what I like about this scene is it revolves around the beauty of the Black woman and, the debutante scene, because a debutante is part of the rites of passage, young girls moving into womanhood in that in-between stage, and to present herself to the world that, I am so and so, I am here, all eyes on me. And we definitely see this with brown skin and deeper complexion woman. We see cameos from certain women who are brown skinned and are famous, like Lupita Nyong'o, Naomi Campbell, a catch, and also a cameo from Kelly Rowland. And it's good to see their friendship still going on, because Kelly has said in the past how colorism has somewhat affected her career, and it's good to see Beyonce through the struggles that they had as a group, to still I got your back, you are beautiful to me no matter what. And also, if you didn't catch, I caught it instantly, a South Asian woman. I will say South Asian because it does not wholly comprise of India, but I did catch a glimpse of a young girl and a woman and a model. I'll put her name up. A South Asian woman, because in South Asia, they have their own thing going on with colorism. We see in Bollywood many prominent stars endorsing products that are harmful to this it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is slated to be $31 billion by the year 2024. So I thought it was interesting to highlight that. So moving on, one of my favorite segments of the film was My Power, and is reminiscent to almost to the end of The Lion King, with Simba, Nala, the lionesses, Timon and Pumbaa gathered together to take down Scar and to reclaim Pride Rock. And I love that one because togetherness of Pan-African artists like Beyonce, you had Tierra Whack, you had Blue Sweetwa, you had Moonchild Sanelli, you had Niger, and you had Yemi Alade, all coming together on this song, and the symbolism of how the lionesses and Simba come together to claim back the throne. So red is prominent in this film, in this segment in particular, because it does represent danger and power, especially danger for Scar. We're gonna get your Scar. They also said this chant in the song, Boomba Boomba Yay, Boomba Boomba Yay, in Lingala means to get him. Lingala is one of the 4 languages spoken in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This chant was uttered in the Rumble in the Jungle fight between boxing greats Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. So it really adds fuel to the fire with Simba and Scar, fighting those two dualities to claim the throne. So I was like, yeah, you get him, Scar, impeach the mofo, So also another symbol that we see in My Power is the symbol of Bese Saka. Bese Saka, I hope I pronounce it right, is a Ghanaian Adrinka symbol, which stands for togetherness and abundance, affluence, power, and unity. And we definitely see that with these women. And to note, because Beyonce is giving a platform to these women, some people that I've heard, like Yemi Alade, but not some of the others, to give a platform by staying on the side, because Beyonce had to do this during her time in Destiny's Child, being aware that she is the most famous and most preferred member out of the bunch. The union of a woman, according to African culture, is reminiscent of the Amazons of Dahomey, now known as Benin. There were a group of women during the 17th and 19th centuries who sought to protect the king. And it also rings a bell to the Dora Milaje, I hope I'm pronouncing that, the army of women in Black Panther. Some also note that the symbol of red is reminiscent of Oya, another female warrior in Orisha, and also talking about the color red. The color red is a symbol of danger, and we definitely see that in this scene. Goes to fight Scar in the Black is King sequence in My Power. We see that Scar's eyes are red. So we definitely see, danger taking over, that symbol of how evil he has become. Going along with cattle, we see that cattle is a symbol of danger because of the stampede scene in the original film, The Lion King, which causes a casualty, in that being Mufasa. And also in one of the scenes in Black is King, when Scar takes his rights to the throne, we see, a cattle head, a cattle skull, by the time that Simba gets back, which is important to point out, that skull has withered down. The scene looked pretty washed up, because in the original film, Pirate Land is pretty much diluted to nothing. So it's important to Simba to bring back that duality. Another significance, another symbolism of Simba maturing from boy to man is when Simba is ascended to the top in Johannesburg's Pond City Tower. And this tower was built during the time of apartheid. So it rings true to, Simba rising from boy to man to being a king through adversity. Pretty much Black is King, I feel like, is obviously the journey of the black man trying to find himself, trying to be who he is, whose he is, in this journey of life. It is existential. I know people throw that term around, it has to do with a life crisis, but this rings true for Africa and its diaspora, learn to find out who they are. Because when you think about it, with Simba, he is driven out of his homeland by an enemy, one of his own people. It be one of your own people sometimes. Take away the most important person, especially with the Atlantic slave trade. Many lineages were ripped apart. If you read the book Homecoming, definitely see two lineages being ripped apart and being affected by on both sides of the Atlantic, on the Gold Coast of Ghana and in America. Wandering in different environments, the diaspora, when Simba is chased out of the Pride Lands, and he has his Hakuna Matata moment with Timon and Pumbaa, recognizing the power and impact through Rafiki and Nala, and especially through the already sequence. So to finding yourself and then realizing your power, learning more about home and history, moments like this to encourage the black man to embrace his roots and going back home. Like now, we have the Ghana trip, many African Americans making the trip to Ghana. So moving on, we'll talk about the criticism. There's a difference between appropriation and appreciation, which is what Beyonce did. She appreciated. She and her team that she has assembled, gathered up, did their research, did their time to take, worked with people from the continent of Africa, artists, to make this dream realize, to bring it to fruition. Because if it was appropriation, we would have to see. But if it was, she would have did it for a phase and move on. But we see in the past 10 years that Beyonce has been celebrating more of her black culture, I guess, because if you speak out too much, you'll get blacklisted or your career won't really project. And we've seen since her time in Destiny's Child and from the start of her solo artistry, being a perfect artist, being America's sweetheart, America's black pop princess, to moving on to the past decade with Lemonade, the celebration of black womanhood, black southern womanhood. We see with Grown Woman that track, kind of being reminiscent of Fela Kuti. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. And with Coachella using her platform to show the mainstream world, African American culture, in particular the HBCU culture and the stepping culture. And now we see this with Black is King, her artistry to show the mainstream the Pan-African culture. And also a shout out to Tarek Ali, because I watched this a while back in terms of cultural appropriation. When she made Girls, Run the World, she brought in the Mozambican group, the Tofo dance group. They danced to Kwaito music and did the Pantazula dance. And she could have made this up on her own and took credit, which would have been, more outrage added to, cultural appropriation deal. But she brought these two guys in to dance along beside her and to show her, some moves. And we've seen that with, and already Stephen Ojo the man who is the Haint Blue man, you know, being in front, showing Beyonce the Zanku moves, and, you know, leading the way as you know, as a spiritual guide, and as also, you know, the right person in authority for this dance. So we see Beyonce appreciating culture, not appropriating. Other mythologies, other pantheons like the Greek, Hindu, and Nordic pantheons respectively are seen as tame in comparison to, say, African spirituality like Yoruba, like Ifa, and likewise. You know, I see people lining up to talk about, you know, the live action lineup for Hercules, because, you know, who do gospel like black people? You know, the Nordic pantheon, the Nordic gods and goddesses, their stories being used as inspiration for Thor, and one of the biggest box offices being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and seeing the Hindu pantheon, you know, being admired elsewhere because it's kind of tame. So it's interesting to see African mythology, West African mythology in particular, being put on the forefront. Now let's get further into the criticism. A thing in speech I learned is to qualify. So I qualified for Noname's tweets in response to Black is King. But first off, I don't agree that this is an aesthetic. The symbolisms and cultural practices and style are a part of these artists' lives, the people that worked on this film. It's not aesthetic, it is an everyday thing, and she should know that, being an African American woman, with our style being used as props and being discarded later on to the next phase. Meanwhile, we have some people being discriminated at work or school for shown, you know, for living in their own tresses, living in their truth in style. So I disagree with that, but I also do think that we can have a duality. We can watch, you know, works like Black is King, like Black Panther and so forth, and to also keep in mind the realities of what's going on the continent, because which I'm also going to reference later on. There is a human rights issue going on with the government of Zimbabwe and protests going on. So we definitely need to keep in mind of the realities that our continental African brothers and sisters face. If we can uplift the imagery, I hope we can uplift those who will never be able to access it. Black liberation is a global struggle. And I really see the vitriol from some people. Her tweets kind of do come off as being woke, as being like shade. I'm over the term woke because it does come off as intellectual vanity, as like elitism over some people. I get it, you got to be aware of some things, but wokeness is pretty much too saturated at this point. But Beyonce could do only so much as an artist, as a person. She has the biggest platform, the biggest artist since Michael Jackson, since Whitney Houston. So that, to that extent, she could do. But, you know, that is left to, you know, the respective governments in the continent of Africa, in particular Zimbabwe. Because, you know, people were going in on Noname. One minute they're defending this woman from, you know, J. Cole and what he tweeted about. Next they're ripping her apart, you know, for criticism for Beyonce and Black is King. And this is what's the problem with stan culture, with celebrity worshiping, let's call it what it is, because some people can't believe that Beyonce is immune from criticism, that she is absolved from her work being viewed adversely, not being liked. I'm not a big fan. I wouldn't call myself a fan in particular, but I think everybody and myself can say that she is a hard worker and she is an icon, putting in more work than mostly stars. You know, the beehive, the fans cannot believe, and I guess because, you know, sometimes we don't like seeing Black women being torn down, but not everything is for you. You know, it's okay to not like this. It is okay not to like Black is King. It is okay to watch and like and dislike certain parts of the film. And so why I qualify for Noname for her tweets is I am referencing another article. I am referencing the Essence article by Judith Sele Irakosi, asking us to be cautious when we watch this film. In the article, he wrote that the romanticism of pre-colonialism Africa is dangerous, i.e. things that had went on before the European powers amplified it were the oppression of women, slavery, imperialism that happened in the continent, and classism. And I'm going to bring up Children of Blood and Bone, the legacy of Orisha series. When somebody as myself reads the book, seeing the Maji being subjugated to discrimination, I reference that because that's another instance of how pre-colonialism Africa was. And if you read the book, you know that you want to punch Enon in the face. In terms of glamorizing the continent, being dishonest to ourselves with these royal narratives, imagine an elite extravaganza of the continent won't change the fact that the master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. Shout out to Audre Lorde. Under the guise of Black power, we spend our lives proving our worth in white spaces. Sometimes we do feel like we have to do positivity when it comes to the image of the African man and the diaspora, because if not, trust me, the mainstream media is going to portray Africa in its usual reality, which is poverty stricken, in need of help, Bono and all these celebrities and these corporations, taking a stake, taking a claim on the continent of Africa. It also feels like we have to prove ourselves as king and queens. We are king and queens. And I remember watching a clip from Mixed-ish. If you're familiar with Blackish, Mixed-ish follows Rainbow's childhood being mixed race. So this scene is where her mother Alicia and her aunt Denise, they're going back and forth about, different types of food, different soul food versus traditional West African food. And Denise is because I put a comment, I'm gonna show you the comment. Denise is like, oh, we always say Black people are kings and queens to make them feel better. And I was like, it's true, no disrespect, but I do think that there is strength in being a regular person, rather than being a king and queen. And when I was thinking about it, it made me think of Up and Away, the Disney Channel movie for all us old heads out there. The Disney Channel original movie featuring Robert Townsend, because there is power with being a regular person, because in that film, just about all the family members except the main character are superheroes, and by the time it comes for him, for his powers to kick in, it doesn't. The fact of the superhero genre exaggerating, the theme of finding out who you are, the theme of teenage life, young adulthood, really brings it out, exaggerates. But his normalcy, his being a regular person, shines through. So yeah, there is power in being a regular person. Many people that dislike the film, some have pointed out that there's always this dichotomy of poverty-stricken Africa and also that of showing traditional African culture, the African spirituality, the Orishas, and likewise, there's always that duality, instead of usually showing African, they're the middle class, and nice houses, things of that nature. That's why it's up to people like us, people and works like say Queen Sono, Adesua Itomi, Killing in the Game, the films that I watch on Netflix, more content from the continent of Africa being shown. It's important to show narratives. And the bigger kicker is this: Beyonce has not performed on the continent of Africa in the last 10 years. Also, Disney Plus has not launched in Africa since its inception in November of 2019. So what is the point of making, work like this? I know it has to do with the Lion King, but what is the point of doing extensive research and making a film like this if it is not being offered on the platform in the continent, the very continent where we derived some of this inspiration from? Disney needs to step it up, especially Disney Plus, because Netflix is killing it in the game when it comes to offering content, in specific Nollywood content, content from South Africa. I'm all for it, for more content, the exaggerated aunties. I'm all for it. But I'd like to end this video with this. I'm also going to give an example. If you ever read or seen the film Persepolis, or what I read in high school, The Kite Runner, it has opened a gateway for me to learn more about Iran culture, specifically before 1979, Afghani culture, like things like that. Opens a gateway for you to want to learn more history about what's going on in that parts of the world, because if not, you're going to get a certain narrative on television, in the media. So I look at that with Black is King, and we definitely did so with Black Panther, which turned out well. Content like Black Panther and now with Black King will cause people, in particular the diaspora of Africa, to ask more questions. Let it be a gateway to learn more about West African culture, learn and other African cultures, and learn more about oneself. So I thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, comment, and subscribe. Remember, the future has potential, and I will see you next time.